Welcome, everyone. I'm Angelo Robles to the Angelo Robles Podcast. I'm also the founder and CEO at Family Office Association. I really enjoy, especially now during COVID and more digital times, of doing these interviews because I get a chance to learn so much as well. To give a little bit of context to those that are viewing or listening in, I help global families and their family offices solve problems, procure positive future outcomes, and prepare for intergenerational necessity. It's vital for families and their family offices to understand their vulnerabilities and become more resilient so they can mitigate risk and prevail during times of crisis. My experience with some of the wealthiest families in the world has allowed me to distill best practices for discovering purpose and refining vision, governance, structures, systems, processes, and culture that successful families and their safeguard family offices need in order to thrive. Our session today is titled Learn How to Run Your Family Office Like a Private Equity Firm. It features Jeff White, who's a family office executive, and the name of the family office is SkyView Capital. Besides that great title, which is going to be, of course, the anchor of what we're discussing, how they are investing uniquely into very much direct opportunities is going to kind of be a little bit of the back-to-back part one and part two. If I had to pick a second title that I would have ran with, opportunities in buying or investing in non-core corporate divestitures as platform investments. So that's a little different. We got some interesting things to discuss today. Let me give you a little bit of context about our special guest, Jeff White. He's been actively involved with all M&A efforts at SkyView Capital since its inception. He brings decades of experience that encompasses private equity, investment banking, and executive management. Mr. White has held critical positions at many distinguished firms, such as Merrill Lynch and Platinum Equity Holdings. Prior to SkyView Capital, Mr. White has been an integral part of Platinum Equity's $8 billion global business development and M&A team. He's been named by the Los Angeles Business Journal, recognized as one of the most influential private equity investors in Los Angeles for many, many years. And again, I've known Jeff for a long time. Jeff, it is great to have you finally on the show.
It's a pleasure, Angelo.
Well, why don't we get right to it? And maybe I'll even give a little bit of further context to those viewing or watching in. What you're doing is so unique in terms of buying non-core spin-out companies from larger companies, and how that could be a great investment strategy for family offices. Regardless of the economic environment, corporations regularly label businesses as non-core. Orphaned divisions are often ignored strategically and redirected strong cash flows to poor performing corporate affiliates. Now, that's setting the stage for what we're going to dive into, but why don't we take the step back, if you don't mind? And I know the family office world is often so discreet and private, but I'm going to try to get a little bit of the information from, tell us a little bit about maybe the principal, your role in terms of heading up the initiatives in the family office, and what led to the formation and interest in doing this all internal as opposed to going to outside firms.
Okay. Basically, SkyView Capital obviously started in 2005. And before that, I was obviously at Platinum Equity, a large private equity fund, where I met Alex Soltani, the gentleman that owns all of SkyView Capital, the Soltani family. And I met him there actually at the private equity fund. He had stopped in to learn the model rather quickly. He was only there for less than a year. And when he was there, he does like, look, I have my own money. I wanted to learn this model and jump out and start my own fund, and supplying it with his own family money. That's kind of how SkyView got started. The background of the family is they were real estate investors, and they still are to some extent to this day. So I'll kind of set the full stage of how kind of SkyView Capital looks. I mean, SkyView Capital is on itself, we are a single LP fund, all funded by Alex Soltani. And that's from some investments he had originally made back before even SkyView Capital was finished in the telecom space, But obviously, over the years, we've been rather successful with a lot of different executing, a lot of different companies we've acquired, and which has helped build up our war chest. The family is loosely affiliated with us, but it's really just Alex's money nowadays, and that's kind of how that came to fruition for me. But it was interesting because, as a family office member, I mean, as someone that is part of a family office, and Alex himself leaving to go work for another private equity fund just to understand the model and coming over and trying to replicate that. We had our challenges in the beginning, as anybody would, trying to do a private equity fund, but being a family office at the same time back way when. And we decided we were just going to replicate the model 100%. And so we look on the outside, most people do not know we are a single LP family office fund. We save that kind of for certain negotiations, and people start asking us, we're working with a CEO that we want to, that we're trying to entice. Sometimes that can be a good lever to pull to show that we understand the situations they're in, and we could probably work a little more directly with them when we're not some nameless, fund with a bunch of LPs that don't really care about them.
Yeah, I mean, that's, very intriguing, and going back almost 15 years now. So you've seen some things evolve and change. At the heart of it, still wanting to be very private, very discreet as a single fund / a single family office. So not looking for quote unquote LPs. There must have been iterations, if that's the right word. I mean, looking back to 2005 to now, simply from tax laws to structuring a family office to how it intertwines with the underlying family assets to how it may intertwine with compensation to key executives, perhaps like yourself. Nothing ever stays static, especially during the COVID times that we're through now. So how does the family or yourself even keep abreast, perhaps every year or two, in terms of how do we look strategically at what we're doing? How do we know when to adapt and change? I'm not going to quite say reinvent ourselves, but adapt with the times.
Those are great questions, Angelo. And we have reinvented ourselves a number of times, even though the outside world probably has never noticed. And initially, when we first formed the word family office was kind of, I'd argue it was kind of a negative connotation, because people would assume if you were buying a company, you didn't really know what you were doing, and private equity did know what they were doing. That's kind of probably the reason we just we said we're a private investment house, private equity firm, and we were that for 10 plus years. And during those years, we were trying to figure out what's the best way to incentivize other M&A professionals or other people that came over from private equity firms to work in this firm. And that's a difficult thing, because we've been short-sighted where we didn't pay well in the beginning sometimes because we thought we didn't have to. And I think this is a problem for a lot of family offices, because we're always trying to, keep our cash as much as possible. And and if you had never come from that environment, the best talent, obviously you have to pay for it. So we had ebbs and flows where we had people in them initially come in and out of the firm, probably really sophisticated M&A investors, all the way down to probably, not fully sophisticated, while we were trying to get our feet on the ground. And at the end of let's just kind of fast forward to where we are now. Now, if you look at us, and this could help anybody as you're trying to figure out if you're trying to ever jump this direction, because we're just going to talk about the PE side of the family office here, is we have a full M&A department with full M&A professionals. And a lot of these M&A professionals we actually acquired from other companies, and we actually integrated them into the top level of the family office for SkyView Capital. So, and we incentivize them with obviously equity carry based on each deal, because there's usually plenty of money to go around. And we also have our entire operations side too to manage everything, because we're not experts, and no one person's expert in all these fields that we keep acquiring in. We bought them. We acquired them from other companies, but they are other private equity firms. They're full M&A professionals. And we also have which I run, is the business development. I run the business development side, but it kind of blends into the M&A side. But I run a group of people, and their main job is to go out there. We're talking with other family offices. We're meeting with investment bankers. We're meeting with the CEOs of companies around the world. It's fully global. And we're looking for opportunities that fit with our strategy and what we're looking for. And sometimes, for other people's strategy, there are family offices that might be friends of ours that we know we could work together with.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a couple of interesting points there. I remember we had on very well-known early stage investor and VC in the summer, Jason Calacanis, and he noted, yeah, I mean, if I'm an entrepreneur or have a company, they would look at family offices. I mean, we're going to first go to the VC companies, but then if we're not getting any bites, we're going to take probably our pretty bad deal to the family office world because they're hungry for direct deals, but it's not as smart money. And I know he meant that a little tongue in cheek. There's always exceptions to that. So I could see why sometimes you don't want to lead with the fact that, hey, we're just a single principal family member, but you look more like a professional, quote unquote, M&A and private equity firm. And that's on purpose. One, I'm not going to quite say to get respect from people in the community and the industry, but it literally is like that. It just happens that you're not looking for LPs because you have the one family that's dedicated behind it. Would you say that what you're doing and running it like a PE firm, are there other branches of the family office that do more classic and traditional things like accounting, airplane management, household management, other non-direct investments, or it's all handled under one roof?
You know, it's funny that you asked that question, but because we have blends, I would call it. As any family office, there's always parts that are going to blend into the other part. I'd love to say that PE is fully and separate from the family office. I mean, the way we like to, if you look on the outside into our, from the website and everything, it looks that way. But I can't say that it doesn't blend into the personal lifestyle of the family member. So yes, you know, plane management, anything. I mean, we have I was just talking to one of our main assistants, and she blends literally between different, you know, execs here and the main exec, obviously the head of the family office. And it can get cumbersome sometimes. We also have a venture capital fund, which is separate from the PE fund, but sometimes investments can bleed over. And since it's all owned by one single LP, it can be hectic sometimes, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I do. And actually, there are people that work in the family office that you would think that people like to be very linear. I do this, I want to focus on this, and this is why I want to be part of a family office. I don't want to rainmake. I just want to be in the opportunity to do what I do. Yet there are others that love the fact that they don't know what tomorrow is going to hold. Maybe they'll do something. You know, we had an executive for a Forbes 400 family that was tasked with things like going to the Caribbean and buying a golf course, going to Scotland and buying a distillery, going to Napa and buying a vineyard. And they really didn't have much experience in any of that, more real estate centric transactions. And they loved it. They loved the fact that it kept them fresh. They dived into their Rolodex, their research, their skill set. It was, to them, that was, we don't want family offices sometimes to be overly institutional and rigid. We like the fact that they can adapt on the fly. And sometimes I don't know what's around the corner. You guys are probably actually 90% more institutional and rigorous, but a little bit of that Machiavellian kind of maverick feel, which is the very nature, both good and bad, of a family office. I had effectively a small private equity shop that's run by a family principal in Greenwich in my backyard. And he kind of chuckled when he heard about how, yeah, families lately have been so active in so-called direct deals. He's like, Angelo, I spend like $6 million a year on my people, my talent. I have office space. I have an internal HR person for the companies we buy that we can make strategic hires and fires as need be in our C-level executives. So you guys are a real operation with millions and millions of dollars of internal cost. When you talk about running a single family office like a private equity fund, and you meet so many family office executives, do you find that most family offices just don't have the stomach, the scale, and want to run it kind of like a business the way that you guys are?
I do find that. And I've been doing obviously a lot of different seminars, as well as, you know, conferences for family offices, and met a lot of great people, and people that do want to kind of, you know, maybe they'll do private equity investing by investing in funds, but they want to jump in and start buying companies and running them. But they want to start doing it on a larger scale. I've had plenty of people approach me about this, but at the same time is the idea of writing the check, and we're talking, you know, decently sized checks here to get the right people to institute the processes where you're really looking to buy 3 to 5 companies a year, if not more. depending on how much money you want to deploy, and incentivize the people that, to help acquire those and keep them around for a while. It's just something you have to, it's the leap you just have to decide you want to take because you're believing in the strategy. It's not like that. I mean, obviously it's not like investing in a VC deal, which is, it comes with its own risk. This is a little bit different because obviously these employees will be yours, and if anything goes wrong, it'll be up to you to fix it quite quickly. And but I'm telling you that once you get it right, I mean, it could be very lucrative, and obviously we've done very well at it. And what's interesting, I'm going to go on one of the things you had mentioned prior, how our family office is coming into the market now. I'm running up against, I mean, when I go to let's say I'm dealing with investment bankers because it's the easiest. Most people know most PE firms buy from investment banks, the deal flow that they're offering up based on whatever your strategy is. I am now running into global family offices that are PE funds, and they're winning some of these bids that normally a regular PE fund would win. It's not happening that often, but it's happening more often than I ever thought it would. And these people are these family offices are fully put together with all the staff and everything, and they're single LP funds too. And it's been interesting. So now the banks take it a little more seriously. So when I'm in a meeting, I'm not as reserved to not say that we're a single LP family office. Sometimes it's actually an advantage for me because I'm like, we can close this company or close this deal literally in 3 to 4 weeks. We'll pay all cash if we have to, and they will understand that.
Yeah, they sure will. Back a little bit to kind of the nitty gritty of that title, running your family office like a private equity firm. That means, again, as you guys learn the hard way, you can't be penny wise and pound foolish. You want to bring in talented people. They're going to scratch their head and say, but I'm an investment banker. I'm a PE professional already. My career may be in front of me. Why do I want to be limited to the whims of one specific family member in principle, unless I know that they're going to be active investors? I know they're not going to invest in everything that we bring to them, but I probably want to make sure that they're investing in enough because I'm assuming that person's compensation is going to feel kind of like a private equity firm. I don't know if it's 2-20 internal. We don't need to know the details of that, but I'm assuming it's an incentive for the person with that kind of background to bring good quality deals to the table, potentially invest in it, manage it properly, and inevitably have an exit. So it literally is run like a private equity firm, I would assume.
It is. And we try to do it as close as possible. So, I'm going to jump around a little bit right here. So, and we do have trouble sometimes, finding and retaining talent. Just for the fact of a normal private equity fund that's, trying to deploy $100 to $500 million every year, has to buy a certain amount of deals, needs to sell them by a certain amount within the window to raise their next fund. So you kind of know where if you're having carry in the fund / the companies, when you're going to have your exits and where IRR will be for yourself as an individual. We try as hard as possible to do that, but as also as a family office, and we have like these slopes in the economy, and we don't want to buy in certain sectors, or we don't want to put money forth at all because we think that we know maybe in 6 months the deals will be a lot cheaper for us. We will hold off as a family and we won't invest. So there could be a gap there, and it would be our job to figure out how to compensate those individuals, perhaps with bonus or extra carry in the next few deals to make up for that. But you're always kind of juggling, how is that going to work for the people we have under us? And it's not, we do officially work like a PE fund. We do provide carry that's comparable to market comps that you would have at any other private equity fund. But the problem is, at the end of the day, it's our money, and it's my family's money of Alex Otani. And if he decides he doesn't want to buy a company for 6 even to 12 months, which doesn't normally happen, he doesn't have to, and then we have to find workarounds for the people and the organization to make them all happy.
Yeah, we have a family office. I don't know if you've met them yet. In Greenwich, Connecticut, in my backyard, of someone with a similar philosophy, not buying the corporate divestitures, which we'll get to shortly, but similar compensation and structure, kind of running it like a professional firm, and actually that's probably, actually a pretty good introduction. You guys should probably get to know one another. We'll deal with that offline and at a separate time. When I think about the principle as you describe them, coming from real estate, although investing in private companies or corporate divestitures is very different, there are some similarities in that they're used of complex assets that are not overly liquid. They probably have time and patience on their side. And they look to, I'm not going to quite say buy it distressed, but maybe, but they look to obviously turn it around, or why buy it? And preferably rather sooner than later. So the fact that that principal is putting, I don't know, 80% of their net worth and money behind private companies that aren't liquid, says a little bit about their long-term approach as well. That being said, I'm sure there needs to be some level of liquidity. If you guys needed to use some of your banking relationships to tap into some of the liquidity at some of the holdings, should it be needed, or another investment comes up that is so amazing, but you don't literally want to use cash in the bank. So you must need to kind of monitor that or work with the principal on that as well.
Well, and that's interesting. So yeah, let me set the record straight a little bit closer. We don't use, obviously, you don't buy companies 100% cash unless it's required to do so, and we really love the investment. And if we're doing it 100% cash, we better be getting an amazing deal on the buy. We have two sides to us. Actually, we're a little bit more technical than you might think we are. We have a restructuring side to us where we buy, obviously, assets that can be EBITDA negative or cash flow negative. And there's usually larger assets, anywhere from 100 to 8 to 900 million top line with, who knows how much they're losing. They're full restructuring plays. We have a whole restructuring side to us. And actually that's been it's gotten a lot more, obviously, it's been growing a little bit more in the last 6 to 12 months because of the current environment. We expect that to keep growing. And we obviously make a lot of our money on the buy there. We also have a growth side to us. We'll do growth equity investments, which we always control investments. So we pretty much control everything we buy. But we'll buy, say we bought a few software companies a few years back, and we were, let's say they were doing 40 to 80 million top line each investment, and they were growing at 25%, but they were also negative EBITDA, but they were negative for a different reason, because we were trying to keep the growth up before we sold them, and they were both great actually investments at the end of the day. And then we have the traditional LBO model where we'll find a company that we like, and obviously we have a head of capital markets in our firm. So this guy's main job is to obviously get the loans for us to do these deals. And so we don't have to put all of our equity to use in each, opportunity that we acquire.
Yeah. So having someone like that, which also costs money. So again, the principal's making a commitment to their family office. But yeah, that's going to be very important, because they likely believe that I could borrow money from banks and institutions at a lower cost than what the advantage I'm getting buying a distressed with the growth I think I'm going to get out of it. It simply is leverage. Not too dissimilar in many ways than real estate, which is why it probably is a decent correlation, although it sounds very different going from real estate to private companies, which actually segues to my next question, going from real estate to not only direct investing, but specifically, very specific, buying corporate divestitures. Just so I'm not talking above anyone's head, which I know I'm not, but why don't you take a pinch of a step back, describe why going from real estate to corporate divestitures, and then even talking a little bit about what they are.
Cool. And I'll make it a few steps back. So when I was working at Platinum Equity in their global BD M&A section of the company, and I met Alex Soltani actually at the firm, their main strategy was, I guess you'd say, software, telecommunications. It was mostly tech. And their strategy was to buy divisions of larger public companies, non-core and non-strategic. Take an executive division out of IBM, it would be like they would buy 50 million top line to 200 million top line companies for minimal value, because it was non-core to the overall parent's objective moving forward. They'd maybe acquired it in a larger transaction they had already completed maybe a few years back. It was part of the strategic review to get rid of it. We found when we were at this firm that their strategy could be kind of broadened and taken into the lower middle market, where we play a lot. Across all sectors. And actually that firm's changed and become a behemoth, and they don't even longer even tell this strategy as much as what we do. I mean, 80% of what we buy, 85%, is a non-core corporate divestiture of some sort around the world. And we own, and right now, we're all over the place. We're in foods manufacturing, we're in call center space, We're in cybersecurity, and we don't when we buy these as platforms. Usually, we're getting a discount on the buy, and that's why we buy, the corporate divestitures. Because when you're negotiating with a public parent that when they have a non-core asset that's really not strategic with them, more than likely, most of the time, they're going to part with it for a turn or two down of what they could get if they hired an investment banker. And I'll add on to that. When we buy them, we don't always go through investment banks. We try to go directly to the public company or private company itself to buy the non-core asset. We use everybody. We use investment banks. We go direct. We use other family offices to reach out to people. There's a lot of different strategies, but we've been very successful in the direct outreach for ourselves. Hence why we have an entire BD firm. But to kind of go back along to what you were referring to, larger public companies, when they sell non-core pieces they feel are non-strategic with them, they usually sell them honestly at lower values.
Yeah, and that's going to be the incentive to buy distressed, because potentially that's where you get value. And anyone who's a value investor, a distressed investor, that's going to be interesting. You beat me to the punch a little bit on the next question, which you answered, but let's dive into it. And that is sourcing these opportunities. Now, you and the professionals on team have Rolodexes. That's one strategy. Investment bankers, maybe even, well, I don't know about business brokers with public companies, probably not. And a big one, and you're very well traveled, and that's meeting other family office executives where someone knows something. And that goes back to the Rolodex question. But you did mention sometimes going direct to the public company. Do you have people on staff that know how to cold call people inside public companies and knowing the breakdown of different companies they own internally and what may be losing money and be a good opportunity?
We do. So this is the real core of our firm kind of comes from, or really relates to. So we have 7 people whose main job it is to really reach out to the global CFOs, CEOs, and head of corporate development / head of M&A of all public companies around the world, and try to keep a relationship as much as possible in the areas that we are interested in. And we try to, as much as possible, follow what they've acquired over the years and make a strategy of keeping ourselves in the limelight of what we'd be interested in if and when they decide to divest an asset. Now, it's a very complicated and can be, time-consuming play, but it does work well for us. So, like right now, currently, and in one of the departments over here, we have people literally chatting with mostly heads of corporate development at the moment and CEOs, and trying to get an idea of what their strategic timeline is for certain non-core assets they have. This may be a little bit more complicated than a normal family office would really entail. But hopefully that answers your question.
That does. I mean, it goes back, years ago before I even launched Family Office Association. So I'm sure it got better. But back in my day in banking, there were simply databases, even back then, of like maybe Hoovers. I don't know if they're still around, where you could look up companies, look up the corporate people, probably some of their contact info. And I'm sure there's databases and resources relative to, this parent company owns this, owns that. So I'm sure that's a value. And if I remember correctly, in your backyard, it's very strong, but ACG, so belonging to organizations where simply people in corporate entities are often a part of and go, that's part of the strategy as well, I would assume.
It is. And some of the other places, Capital IQ, that's one of the software
yes.
You can break everything apart. Deal Cloud, we could go down the list. It's not hard to buy these services and break these companies apart, especially if the more, I'd say direct you are in knowing what you want, the easier it is. It's just when you open it up and it's every company in the world that's public with all their divisions, it can seem very difficult at times. So we have specific mandates and directions we go with to decide what we want. This is why I think it'd be kind of, but I'm going to go back to the part that we didn't really talk about, which is we also get a lot of our deal flow from family offices, which I think relates to this group even more.
Yes.
We hear about, it's not just, what they've heard, it's also what they have. A lot of these firms have a lot of, unrealized or weren't able to take it to the next level assets. And we're always our ears are always open. We're like, well, maybe we can work together here. Maybe we can take it. We can own this jointly, or we'll buy it from you, or you want to keep a percentage of it, because we can do whatever, works with both parties, since we're a family office. And what we'll do is our background to build it up. We'll go find the other add-ons for it, so we all win. So that's been also an interesting strategy for us.
Yes, very, very much so. And we'll probably even circle back a little bit to that later relative to family offices. Given it's been around relatively a long time, approximately how many corporate divestitures has SkyView acquired over the years?
It's been over 30, probably hit, 32, 34. And then when we do add-ons, obviously we don't count those, because those are usually private companies, we mostly grow by acquisition. So our job as a private equity, fund way of looking at things is grow as fast as possible, so we can exit at the highest value possible.
And if you could talk a little bit, pick one of the 30, even if you don't mention a name, but if you want to, that would help. And maybe walk us through a little bit of the process, the capital, the transaction, and the exit.
Okay. Well, I can talk in general terms, obviously. We bought a company called Digital Fuel from VMware. If you're familiar with VMware, it's a large
I am.
company. And Digital Fuel, think of it as it was a software that kind of managed large corporations' balance sheets. So it was very detailed. Like, what's your software that you're running, and all from your 30,000 people you have at your office. Also, how much mops would cost, down in on who's cleaning the floors. It was a software that everything fell to the bottom line, so you could watch and look at everything. And it was when we acquired it from Digital Fuel, I would say they had probably 5, 6 good customers, well-known brand names, but it wasn't doing really well. And we saw the opportunity. It was losing money too. And so we saw an opportunity, like, we could just take this, and all we had to do is grow it and add on more customers, large customers, which isn't always the easiest thing to do. It's a great concept and thought process. And we did acquire it. We went with an entire structure of we're going to put, tens of millions of dollars into this asset. We're going to go for growth. And we're guessing someone will love this space as we grow it over the years, which we're planning to hold on to too long, probably, 2-year hold period. But if we had to go 3 or 4, we would. And we were investing money for growth. So we were trying to buy and acquire customers with long-term contracts, 2 to 3 or 4 years. And that was a strategy. And we held that. And then we found someone approached us and acquired the asset. It was a good story overall.
Yes, that certainly is a good one. And that basically brings up, I guess, my next question, which I would probably ask to a private equity firm, but you guys are a single family private equity firm effectively. Okay, let's use that example or another one. You're likely buying, and you gave good reasons why, from corporate divestitures where you're probably getting inherently a bit of a discount, or you're not going to buy it. So already at the purchase alone, you may in theory be net profitable if nothing else changes, if you find the right strategic buyer. That being said, you're obviously looking to grow the company. So you guys are going to look at, I'm assuming, a couple of things. Where is the company or the division fell short? Could we bring in other C-level executives? Could we adapt the board a little bit? How could we use our Rolodex to help them strategically grow? Is there someone on board in the family office that's an expert, like a former McKinsey partner on growth? How do you make something that's okay or a little below average, arguably, and make it better where it's going to be able to exit in whatever 3, 5, 7 years?
Well, it's actually one of the most important pieces of SkyView Capital. And we actually have a full M&A professional, an operational professional, Daryl Smith, and he's hired, and we have McKinsey people as well as, other, E&Y, take your pick, that with backgrounds, but a lot of them have, had been in the PE space. So they understand what the dive in and fix as fast as possible mentality is that we have, because there's always some piece that's missing. That's or we wouldn't buy the asset, because we're trying to make as much money on the buy as possible. So, and especially when you buy from corporate investors, these are some of the nuances with it. Obviously, if it's connected to a large public parent, it doesn't have its IT, doesn't have HR, doesn't have sometimes management, sometimes it doesn't have sales. Sometimes it has everything as a standalone, but more than likely it's missing something. And we actually have a giant back office. We bought a company that's just a back office that we use to plug and play, where we can literally just initially once we buy one of these assets, we can have it running from the back end office. It's never as easy as it sounds, but for us, it works really, really well.
Excellent. No, that makes a lot of sense. And it probably varies, of course, from deal to deal, market conditions, the growth of the company, whether you want to get in early, get out later, whether you need some cash. All that being said, so lots of variables. What would be deemed to be a good exit? Is it 3 years, 5 years, or sometimes 7 or 10?
Well, it's an argument that we have constantly around here. What's the exit? When are we planning to exit with the assets we acquire? And this is where it comes into the having M&A professionals and having a family office professional at the same time, where they can there can be a little bit of a heated argument of when we should get out of things. Because technically, if you're a family office, you can hold on to cash flowing businesses that are growing forever, and they're great investments. But what we found is better to take the cash off the table, and when it's most appropriate. So I'd say on average, we've held companies for 10 years, and we've held companies for 12 months and a day for taxes. We actually sold some companies even before the 12 months and a day, because the value was so high that we were being offered. It made up for a lot of the tax situation being hit by it. That's not normal. No, I'd say our hold period could be, it also depends if we're buying software versus, some manufacturing piece, and what our strategy is for building the manufacturing up. If we had to buy other plants in other states or other countries, like we bought a division out of Praxair, it was called PAS Technology, basically refurbished jet engine airframes and blades they used in the engines. And we got it for like 12 million of EBITDA. And we actually partnered with another PE fund with this one. This is one of our earlier deals that had a lot of experience in aerospace. We don't do that as much anymore, but we did it at this point, and we took it, past 30 million of EBITDA in a few short years, and then we sold it. But that's, with a lot of add-ons. It was all grown by acquisition, not much organic for that one. But if that answers your question.
Interesting. And I'm assuming via the exit, the same investment bankers and M&A professionals that help to source deals, their Rolodex, the Capital IQs, Hoovers, whatever the others, maybe work in reverse when you're looking to sell. So that's a valuable Rolodex that may come full 360.
It does. And it's funny because we'll take our cybersecurity asset. It's called Fidelis. And it's been sold multiple times by multiple people. We actually bought it from another private equity fund called Marlin Equity. And we're doing a buy strategy. We're doing a build-up strategy for it right now. And it's really, you have to buy other assets to grow it. Because it has a lot of government contracts. And it's been interesting. It's not been one of the easier things we've had to grow. Everything costs a lot of money in this space. Like, we're times revenue by a lot. And we've been trying to figure out what's the fastest way to do this for us as a family office. And we've reached out to other family offices that own in the cybersecurity space. But the bankers that had sold it to us originally, that were involved in the process, I should say, because we actually bought it direct, had been involved in all the other processes. So we actually hired one of them, put them on the board, and they're helping facilitate, the strategy we're laying out because when we're buying it, we already have a strategy of when to sell a lot of these assets at a certain timeline. But this is probably what you're alluding to, probably 3 years from the date we bought. It's not always static like that, but that's kind of where we were kind of going with this asset, unless the numbers don't make sense when we go to try to think about selling it, and then we'll hold on to it longer and invest more into it.
And in terms of COVID, so we're in COVID times. It's been 7 or 8 months in. This is October of 2020, by the way. And it's going to be with us a while. I'm assuming that potentially has created opportunities for corporations that are looking for a divestiture of something they have that now is even more compromised or challenged by COVID. How has the family office, I don't know if I'd quite say taken advantage of that, but how they pounced on what could be some even more opportunities?
Good question. And it goes both ways on this one. So it also hit us as well. So we have a call center with 16,000 people around the world, and they all had to almost all go home, within a week, which we had no at-home model. So that was kind of interesting to figure that out. So to say COVID hasn't been challenging in some respects, even our own portfolio, it would be saying that it would not be telling the truth. But at the same time, as we managed all that, And we've managed I'd say it hit every one of our portfolio companies. The only one that did really well, extremely well in this environment, we have a private label food manufacturer that, has a lot of ties to Costco and things, and other, partners like that. And they've done extremely well, which is, I would never would have seen that coming, but it was interesting. Now, but we are expecting, and right now deal flow is going straight up with the COVID situation. A lot of companies are really hurt right now. And a lot of them were surviving on the PPP money, the government money, subsidies, and they're finding other ways to stay together because they're waiting for their next round of stimulus. If it comes or doesn't come for them, I don't know. But we're from what we're seeing right now, it's not looking good for a lot of people. And a lot of companies seem to already be dead in the water. They're just finding ways to survive until they can't, and then we're going to go on a huge buying spree, and we are right now. I think it's going to be a lot worse actually in January.
Actually, that does segue into my next question, and this is going to take both guts, but sometimes with guts can come a lot of glory. How about verticals and sectors that are absolutely impacted? I mean, events, travel, shipping, or at least from a travel perspective. And then you have to decide, I could say this for real estate in New York as well, like, not only a 5 or 10% discount, maybe we could get a 30 to 50% discount, but there is a but coming. Like Netflix did the Blockbuster a long time ago. There's no guarantees. Maybe the industry has changed and altered forever. So with that risk of buying risky sectors at deep discounts, perhaps means they just never bounce back.
It's true. And take travel. It's a good segue into this. We looked at a number of travel companies, even the last 3-4 months, and their revenue went from hundreds of millions to like 10 million. And I'm even shocked it went that low. And of course, they're obviously negative. But when we start talking to the experts in travel, which we're not, and we called quite a few of them because we thought we were going to get these companies for a steal, they're explaining to us for these travel assets we were looking at, they're like, it's not coming back to 2023. And they're like, we can't hold on to negative assets that long and then hope it's all going to come back and be great. So I think travel has changed a lot, and there's a lot of other industry classes or asset spaces that have as well. And it's trying to we looked at a bunch of oil and gas assets just because they were cheap and they have a lot of assets, so you could leverage them. But I'm glad we didn't buy the ones we were looking at. They're huge, billion top line revenue producing companies that were negative and are still negative and may just go away as it is. But you would have thought they would have been good buys if you looked at them, 4 months ago.
Yeah, it's a little flippant to say, but in 30 deals over 14, 15 years, obviously not everyone is going to be successful, and you must have talented tax people either on staff or that you utilize perhaps around the world. There probably are times when it's strategic to take some losses relative against gains. In real estate, it's even better because you got the 1031s. Now you got opportunity zones. There are some unique things in the tax code for private companies as well, depending on how it's structured. But that could be very complex. Is that a reality? Not every deal is going to go up. And is that handled more internal, external, or a combination of both?
It's a combination of both for us. So, as the outward-looking PE firm that we appear to be, we have all internal accounting, but we also have to have external accounting, external lawyers. We have internal lawyers as well. And we utilize a lot of outside industry experts for all of our accounting needs, to be honest with you, because we are in multiple countries and it's just very difficult to try to figure out all these different these taxes. And obviously you get lost. We have losses from, based on the year of how the company looks. I don't think losses are always a bad thing if you can, play them through and have it hit your tax return, and then you can get it to grow, to the point where you need it the next year to sell it for, a good profit.
My next question, it's meant to be a pinch tongue in cheek. You probably do not want your principal to hear this, but I'm sure this conversation has come up. We had an executive that I had on. He didn't allow it to be recorded. It was probably 4 or 5 months ago. He was actually a combination family principal and a person that did direct deals in the family office. And I asked him, given that you're analytical, and you know a lot of fund managers, and you look back at how venture capital and PE is doing if you were to be an LP, you don't have to build an internal team. You don't get some of the headaches. You don't have to manage people, fire people, make strategic decisions. And yeah, I mean, I guess you're paying 2 and 20, but it's not like having people internal is free. It might even be more money. And he even stopped me in my tracks. He goes, Angelo, I think I know what you're getting at. Would my returns have been a little less, about the same, or more if I strategically invested in outside funds, but I didn't have the headache? You know what? Even with the 2 and 20, you might be right. However, I like this. And one, I like control, which I completely have in what I do. I have very little of that with a fund. And then he did go into, it also is a way for me to engage the next generation into not just randomly investing in public companies, but to literally see how businesses are run and how they succeeded. But yes, if you were to say, could my return net have been maybe the same picking the right funds? Probably. Have you guys or the principal ever thought about that? I know that may be a little concerning to you, but has it ever come up?
It comes up all the time, actually, because let's just take the principal, Alex. He obviously wants to make the most money possible. And if he thought he could invest his money in just a traditional, private equity fund and get a better return, he would shut us down in 10 seconds, I bet. But he also, again, but the same thing is he likes control. Like, we know what's going on with every one of our investments. If we have an issue, we fix it immediately. He's very hands-on. Like, he's highly involved in all of our portfolio companies. He is he directs the whole firm daily, and so I don't think he would ever want to give up that control for that. But when it comes to IRRs, let's be honest. You're investing in a large, multi-billion-dollar Carlyle fund. They don't mind returning, 8 to 10%. That could be really good, actually.
Yeah, sure.
We're shooting for a lot higher than that. We're shooting, I'm not going to say we're shooting for 15 to 30 if we can get it for these exits. We're shooting to buy right and build fast. And so it's a different strategy.
Yes. In terms of back to COVID, but a different perspective. You're in, LA in Southern California. I'm in the greater New York area. We got hit probably a little harder earlier. And then we have the issues, other challenges, some of it weather-wise, upcoming shortly as the weather gets colder. But how has the family office adapted to an office setting, remote setting? And have you found through the use of, you have no choice, as well as technology, that remote has actually been maybe more efficient? It took a little time to get as effective, but you're almost there. And is the balance kind of working for the family office?
That's a great question. I'm going to argue that point to some extent. So I would say it's been effective, but it's not ideal. And we've had when and all of our portfolio company CEOs are trying to tell us the issues they're having. Our M&A executives, and we're trying to catch everybody for Zoom or Microsoft Teams calls. It's been hectic, and we miss things. And like, even with my own team, it's like I need to make sure like what they're doing. It's really more of a hands-on job, and it can all be managed obviously remotely. But like right now, I'd say we're 30% open in the office. Everybody else is at home. We're chatting about integration, but obviously it's all voluntary because you don't want anybody to come to work that doesn't want to come to work. It's been challenging. This has been one of the more challenging things. We're going from a fully operational firm that, we see each other every day, and we talk about how we're going to do this deal and do this, and then trying to, with everybody together, and then trying to schedule time to do that and have people talk over each other in a Zoom call. As you know, it can be challenging that way as well. And when we first started COVID, we were completely at home. Everybody was working from there, and I and a few other people decided we're just going to voluntarily come into the office because we weren't getting as much done as we probably could.
Yeah, I would say there's advantages, and some companies have adapted better. Sometimes their business model allows them to adapt better, and sometimes the age of their talent, who may be very digitally proficient and used to working that way, all could play into it. I guess the disadvantages are, and you didn't use this word, but kind of it's the water cooler effect, just bouncing ideas off one another. And that's the magic of physical events. It's the serendipity of not as much the technical information in the session that comes and goes in 30 to 45 minutes. Actually, our conversation now is more intellectually deeper than at a physical event. So if you're listening to this live or viewing or watching it, whatever, you're probably getting deeper, pure intellectual content. You're just not getting the serendipity of bumping into people and doing the deeper dive. But one thing that I have heard from family offices, and I'll ask you guys, that's a negative. And again, I do think there have been positives, but a negative is, and I'm using their words, Angelo, we're having a harder time hiring what I would say are young, talented people because, damn it, they need our handholding because they're not there yet in their experience. So how am I going to make a hire at six figures out of college or maybe now into their second position in their mid to late 20s, but we feel like we need to indoctrinate them into our culture and how we do things. And it may not be impossible virtually, but damn it, it's a lot harder.
Well, it is harder. And I just hired 3 new people, and this was kind of even against HR and my HR department, but it's like, we have to have a working good relationship with everybody I work with, and it has to fit our culture. So I needed to meet everyone in person that we were having these interviews with, and we did the whole safety, mask on, social distancing, multiple interviews, which a lot of people aren't doing at all right now. And that's just that's what I literally just went through to make that happen. And these people do work in office, all spaced out, spread out. It's again, all voluntary, but I think it's really, really difficult if you don't have that personal interaction. And there's only so much you can get off a Zoom call, based on, I guess the human way of looking at how, the nuances of, our movements, I guess you could say. A good example of this we're having right now is, when we buy companies, we do management presentations normally. We go meet the management, you shake everybody's hand, you tell them, they're great, if they are great. And, you get to really know the CEO, the CFO personally. You go to have drinks with them. We haven't been able to do any of that. And so we're getting very concerned that and you also can see a lot of negative traits when you do that. And you can see why you wouldn't want this person to run this company. Well, we're still buying companies and we're not doing this. So I have a feeling we're gonna have some fallout with some of these people because we weren't able to get there and see behind the scenes, that you might say.
Yeah, that's a very honest answer. So we certainly appreciate that. And true, these are all the challenges during COVID times. And again, something that looks like miraculously, it's not just going to change in the next 30, 60 days. If you factor in, vaccine and the population getting it, we're probably looking at sometime next year, very possibly before it feels somewhat normal, the latter half of next year. So this is going to be what needs to be adapted to, but there are opportunities out there that you guys are familiar with where you can't let your foot off the pedal. You have to stay active, even though, if I'm the family, I would say, wow, we're making decisions with maybe hundreds of millions of dollars of my money. And we're sometimes making these decisions without even physically meeting the companies we're investing in. That's a little scary.
It is.
Yes, I would assume it is. Talk to me a little bit. We hinted at it, but you're active in the space. You've been a speaker at Family Office Association before. The value in you interacting with other families and family office executives from the perspective, again, you're not looking for an LP, so you don't want any money. But what are the opportunities for you to meet with other people in the community, from deal flow to exits to who knows what, to maybe some one-off opportunities, maybe co-investing, I'm not sure. What are some of the advantages to meeting other legit family offices?
I find that I learn a lot on other strategies that some other people are telling the larger family offices. All the way from, other PE strategies to venture strategies, because we do entail all of it. Even real estate strategies. I met someone in your Palm Beach, one of your Palm Beach events, that was kind of explaining to me his real estate investment strategy. And I relayed it all back to the head of our family office, and we actually looked into it. And it's also it's who they know. Like, this is one of the great things about family offices. They're actually pretty collegiate, and they all work pretty well together, and they're not afraid to introduce people to other people that they like. And I found I've been introduced to quite a few number of people that have actually led me to other deal flow, not directly as you might assume, not that I know this opportunity that's going to be here. I've had that, but it's, you should talk to this person. They've been working in this space. They've seen interesting stuff. I like this guy or gal. And of course I would have that conversation, and I will do the same, especially when if someone tells me something they're looking for. I mean, I'm big in networking that way. I do not mind offering up contacts and other strategies. And if it makes sense, I would be more than happy to connect people. It's really about the connection of people at the end of the day, like-minded people with the same, values and, go forward strategies.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a fragmented, siloed community that even highly talented people, I know you're able to keep more private that way, and that does have some advantages. But if you're not actively out there meeting peers, meeting people that might be better than you, and you're learning from them, and you're not actively out there, then you get stale. The family may realize that, and then you may be in a position as an executive where, oh my God, I didn't even grow and expand as much as I wanted. Now I'm 7 years older, and I may be a harder fit in a company that may be looking at me compared to someone else. I've had this dialogue before. It gets a little complicated. Should a family office always bring people internal, or some things be better outsourced? I'll give an example. An example is if you're doing something where it's highly technical, but you don't do it often, you're probably better off outsourcing to the best of the best. And even if you're overpaying them a little bit, for a couple of reasons. One, they may not be a great team player in your family office, which is likely small, and one super ego or bad apple could kind of make things a little topsy-turvy for everyone. Two, you may not make that person engaged enough because you're not doing enough of what they do. They may get disappointed, not make as much money. And three, they're just only dealing with you, where if they're at, Goldman Sachs, they're dealing with the world, and they get their ear to the grindstone. They hear what's going on. They're keeping fresh. Unless you're a highly active direct investing family in the perspective that we're talking about, you may be better off with a very lean SFO staff and outsourcing. Even though that sounds counterintuitive to building an SFO, it just may be the better route to take for some families.
I would agree. And this is another, conversation we currently always have inside of this firm as well. We love to go with the way of who do you know, via our connections, our partnerships. And sometimes it's better if we go completely outside of ourselves to have someone with a different strategy, a different way of looking at things that can come in and say, you should see it this way. And we've had a lot of luck with that. They may not fit the culture at all, but doesn't mean they're going to be a part of it forever, but they can come in and they can give us a different way of looking at things. And I found it very valuable. And we've had some people where it was a friend of a friend and it didn't work out as well as we thought it was going to be because we didn't do diligence, because it was a friend of a friend, and we just take it at face value. And I guess that's part of the nepotism problem I think some family offices have, and I think most of them do have it. But it's just trying to work that way. It's trying to work your way out of that. And I'm not saying it's always bad. We've had some great people come that way. I just think I think I agree with you, Angelo. Not being afraid to pay a little bit more money for that kind of viewpoint is priceless sometimes.
And it's a little bit of a personal question, but the principal, do they have adult age children?
No, his children he's my age. He's on the younger side. I guess I'm not that young anymore, but
compared to me, yes.
Yeah, he's basically my age. So his kids are, if I remember correctly, they're like 12 to 14.
Okay, I mean, that's young. If they were, maybe right post-college, a lot of times they may get involved in the family business, which kind of is the family office and investing, and that could be good. And first of all, the family could do what they want to do. That's the advantage of having their own family office. But as a non-family executive, it probably, and again, we're talking just open, I've covered this subject in my podcast before, it could be good. It could be bad. It could be nepotism. It could be, I know as family office executives have told me, Angelo, I don't like it. I kind of feel that they're spying on me and it doesn't make me as natural and relaxed. So we've had that discussion. We had a gentleman from Germany on a couple of weeks back. He was great. He has a well-known blog about the 10 negatives of working in a family office. It's up on my YouTube channel now. Sven was his first name. I'm forgetting his last name. And I've covered the subject a little before in my master classes and some of the things that I do. On the other hand, if they do it right with governance and how decisions are made, there's nothing wrong with the family passing on their history and their tradition, their legacy, and kind of their family business is the family office. So, and that's the whole magic. And I mentioned this earlier. There are some executives that like the fact that things are dynamic, they change, you do different things every day, and they don't want to be overly siloed and linear. So that's the whole magic of a family office. They are snowflakes. They're all different, right, Jeff? I mean, you meet so many of them yourself.
It's true. And, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned him and, wanting to potentially, he's grooming his son and he's a son and daughter. They are both being groomed when they get old enough to run this company. I know that for a fact. If they choose to do it. But as we all know with family offices, sometimes the kids choose not to go with the family, they go with the, whatever the family office does, or they do their own thing. And that's correct. They're all snowflakes. So I literally don't know how that will end up for this family office, but I've met a lot of them just like you have. And it's always interesting to see how family offices will pivot and make a whole new section for the kids that, want to do maybe more philanthropic activities or whatever, honestly.
For sure. And my regular listeners know I probably have to ask this question about buying private companies, and not even necessarily from a profitable perspective, although what you guys do would be a part of it. For me, more on wealth preservation, ear to the grindstone, and tax benefits, potentially more so for offshore families than American families. But any experience buying banks or insurance companies?
We have never bought one.
And with regulatory issues and complexities, it probably is something you would want to keep away from unless there's specific sector niche or expertise. And again, my perspective was less from investing because it's a good business idea, although maybe, but more so from the complexity of weaving in the family office, wealth preservation, and tax benefits. I did cover that with Martin Michaels, probably the most prominent attorney in Switzerland. And I am big on Switzerland and some offshore ownership. And that's also up on my YouTube channel. So I probably have too much up on there, but it's just fun doing this. I've had to adapt during COVID as well. So it's been an intriguing time. Jeff, for those that are family offices or simply deal people, I have no idea. And they enjoy this conversation, want to learn more about SkyView and you. How could they learn more?
The best thing they could do is if they're really interested and they're part of, FOA, have them reach out. I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody.
Well, you're very kind. And to give some context, Jeff in the family office is a member of Family Office Association. Now, again, because this will be a little more public, in theory, other family offices who are not members or in theory, anyone in the world may reach out. But nonetheless, most people are respectful of your time. Is there a website?
Well, we have our corporate website, which is skyviewcapital.com.
Sure.
And if obviously I'm on the website, and if they really want to get a hold of me, they can just shoot me an email. And if they're interested in potentially more ideas on how we potentially started the private equity side of the business, and if there are questions that relate to that, I'd be more than happy to give guidance on our starts and our struggles. Hopefully it's not like a plethora of people that want to talk.
Otherwise you could charge them a consulting fee.
But I don't mind helping and giving guidance because I've done it quite a bit, and there's a lot of things to take in when you're deciding to do that.
And is your email up on that SkyView website, or do you want to just give it now?
It is not. So my name is Jeff White, and it's J White, like the color, WHITE, at skyviewcapital.com. That's SKYVIEWCAPITAL.com.
Excellent. Well, Jeff, it's been great to have you on. I haven't seen you personally since earlier in the year in Florida. We're hopeful, as we discussed, of doing something actually in the next couple of months. I actually have a chance to pull the trigger on something intimate in Miami in early December. I'd probably need to keep it 15 people, but simply stay tuned. So we are interested in getting out there a little bit more. I've been cooped up in Connecticut maybe a little too long, and apparently haven't had a haircut in a while, Jeff, as you could tell.
count me in when you have your next live event, please, because I'm itching to get out.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. And everyone, in wrapping up, it's been great to interview Jeff. I've known him for a while. I love this model. I love what they're doing. And hopefully it was very insightful. Part of our role is to probably even take out from people a little more than they want to give in the private world of the family office community. So I thought that Jeff was very direct, very insightful, and hopefully you all got value out of it, whether live, hearing it on audio in a podcast, reviewing it on YouTube, or one of my platforms. Everyone, I'm Angelo Robles. I'm the host of the Angelo Robles Podcast. I'm the founder and CEO at Family Office Association. We're a global membership organization dedicated to families of wealth and their single family offices. We do a significant amount of original proprietary content now more than ever. And although physical events are a little limited, although I did just note, we may start quietly, discreetly, and very intimately to get back involved with them. But in the meantime, we're doing hundreds of events a year, literally, actually. They just happen to be digital, similar to the hour to hour and a half today that we had with Jeff. And again, sometimes on a specific topic, they're actually deeper dialogues and more intellectual than the fast-paced at a physical event. They each have their advantages, but we are extremely active during COVID, hosting both live and recorded masterclasses, and really have a plethora of resources and knowledge available to our members on so many different topics in my Rolodex, and hopefully how I could be of value to them. So feel free to inquire, learn more about membership. Probably our website is best. It's been updated about 5 or 6 weeks ago. It's our company name, so it's easy, familyofficeassociation.com. My direct email is angelo@familyofficeassociation.com. We're extremely active on social media. On YouTube, we're simply Family Office, but we're active on LinkedIn, Facebook, and we're Family Office Association on Instagram. Have a chance to reach out. Always happy to connect. And on that note, Jeff, thanks for being such a great guest. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Angelo.
Thank you.